Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We are talking about the UTC time zone and locale enhancements that are coming to the platform this fall and several other applications in the near-ish future. We're joined today by myself, Megan, as many of you know, and Chris is on the line with us as well to talk about some of the details of these changes. Say hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
I set you up for that one. I should have known. As usual, I will be looking at questions in the question chat and throwing those out to Chris or answering them myself as appropriate. So don't hesitate to ask any and all questions you have. And as a reminder, we have an upcoming webinar for Thursday, September 12th. I can't believe that we're already talking about September. How did that happen? I feel like IMPUG was last week, like the whole summer just disappeared. But anyway, we have a webinar with one of our new partners, Sodium Halogen, and we're excited to introduce you to them and have them show you some of the things that they have been working on with some of our churches. So to get into the details of what we're talking about today, as many of you know, we have been kind of in this interim phase with UTC, where you see some things in your system time, most things in your system time, and then there's those few kind of edge things that haven't been and have been in UTC. So things like the audit log, scheduling messages, scheduling your notifications. So those are things that have kind of always been one of those like, oh yeah, I have to remind myself and my users to do some mental math when they're looking at those things. So we've kind of been operating in this zone of having both things going on. So our goal in making these changes and enhancements is to kind of get everything on the same time and get it lined up to make it easier for you and your users as you're looking at data in the platform to just have it kind of all be on the same time zone, but also to have the additional enhancement of understanding that maybe you have a campus that is in a different time zone, and so you have staff that's in a different time zone, and they want to be able to use the platform and not have to remember to translate things back maybe to Eastern time if they're in Central time. So basically making the platform smart enough to let the user have a different time zone and maybe even a different locale, which would be the formatting of dates and times, and make that translation in the UI so that everyone can see the data in their own time zone. So this is something we're working on getting into the platform, and then eventually we'll also be adding this enhancement to our other applications as well. We did explore kind of doing a full conversion to UTC. So instead of moving the few things that are in UTC to the server time, instead moving everything to UTC. But that idea was, we decided to kind of do a about face on that idea just because of the impact that would have in just the entire ecosystem, all of the integrations and custom development that we have currently, and that would just put a big burden on the ecosystem that wasn't maybe necessary. So we came up with this different approach to still accomplish our goal of having users be able to set their own time zones and see things in their time zone, but then make it more of an optional thing for any additional custom work to take advantage of these enhancements as well. So I'm going to let Chris take it from here. He's going to walk through kind of some of what are the actual changes going to be that you're going to see when you get the platform fall 2019 update, which will be coming in the maybe late September and definitely October timeframe. And then the impact as well as any changes you can make if you want to update any of your custom work to also take advantage of these new enhancements. So
Awesome. So in the forthcoming update, there's going to be some things some notable changes that are us getting ready for the full UTC conversion. So coming right now, the user record, the time zone, and locale fields are going to become drop downs. Right now they've been in our cars, but they're going to become drop downs. And null values there will mean the same thing. There'll be a fallback to the domain for basically figuring out the time zone and locale settings. The same is going to be true on the domain record. So instead of these things being free-form text fields, they're going to become drop-down lists. Not a big deal, but some preemptive and preliminary work we're doing to get ready for the actual time zone conversion. So after that, when the UTC conversion is complete and we do the system changeover, all of the system date time fields that are currently stored in UTC, i.e. audit log, DP communications messages, they're going to be migrated from UTC to the local system time zone. So that means whatever the time zone of your SQL server is the time zone to which these values will be converted. And that's because that is the default time zone that you're operating in right now. So any default field values where we've plugged in get date or anything else, they're always using the SQL time to render those or to create those initially. That's one time and one way. We won't be doing that after this. It'll just be a cleanup to get everything back on the system time. The platform will immediately begin calculating the offset between whatever the system or domain time zone is and the time zone of a user. So if the user has a null time zone, it's going to fall back on the domain. If the user has the same time zone as the domain, then there won't be any offsetting happening. If it's different, though, then the platform will be rendering on the fly the converted date times. And user time zones can be set in a couple of different places. So there's the DP user record and also in their user administration panel within their user account panel within the platform. So here's the part most of you are here to worry about. What does this mean? What are the ramifications? None. That is right. Everything should continue working the way it does today, with the exception of DP communications and the audit log dates and times will be correct. So Megan mentioned it quickly, but I'm going to dive into it just a little bit deeper. The original plan was to convert all date times to UTC so that the future of the platform was UTC for everything. As we interacted with a couple of customers early on and had some conversations surrounding that, it became very apparent to all of us, to all of them, to everyone that us adopting a true UTC conversion would have just been a train wreck in terms of the amount of custom code that would have to be done, custom views, custom everything. So we've really gone with what we can call the best of both worlds given our current situation. So for those of you who don't ever intend to do anything with time zones, you really don't have to change anything and everything will continue working just the way it has. Again, with the system tables coming up to being the correct time. So now, kind of pursuant to that, Ministry Platform and all of its applications will be moving more and more towards allowing multiple user time zones. So again, all of our tools use the same things that you guys have built and the same APIs. So initially, we're really going to be focusing on the platform and making the system table conversion. And then as we start down the road, the next couple of development sprints per application, we're going to make them smart enough as well. So for instance, the batch manager will be able to look up the user's time zone and calculate and conduct the shift of the times and time zones. Not that there's that much time zone data in the batch manager, but just as an example, it would begin being able to shift based on the time zone. There's also what will happen in the next update, not this one. This update that's coming is just a preliminary. This is not the UTC conversion. We haven't started work. Yes.
It's actually all one. We are doing it all in one release.
Oh, we're doing it all in one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're doing it all in one release. Thank you. I had not been caught up on that.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's okay. Thank you. So in this upcoming release, we're going to be shifting all of this at once, and the date times will be being adjusted as well. We're also going to be introducing a number of new metadata tokens that you're going to see right away. So we are going to shift all of our views and other metadata to use some new tokens, and I'll get into that in just a second because they're actually on this screen. You can continue using getDate. Just remember, when you're using getDate, that's always falling back to the domain or the server time zone. It's not going to take into account anything about the user. So we've got a new token, this DP_domain time, which will actually go ahead and deal with, effectively, it'll be the same as getDate for the moment, but in the future, it's going to allow us to have some offsets for the user. We also have a couple of other DP level tokens that you'll see in a few minutes. We've got a DP user time and DP user time zone, amongst some others. And those can all be pulled together so that if you wanted to create a new view or a new selected record expression or a new view clause that you wanted to share potentially with somebody who is doing time zones, then you could use those tokens and take all of that into account. The other piece of this puzzle that is kind of out there is custom reports and stored procedures. Again, today, right now, they're going to keep working the same way they did. getDate is getDate. That's all built into SQL. But there are some other things that you can use if you need to do any sort of user-based time zone shifting for any of your reports or stored procedures. So here's some of those new tokens that we were talking about, and Megan's got a UTC change guide that we're going to be getting out to you guys that kind of goes over some of this in a little bit more depth. We were going to spend some more time on it today, but the guess is that most of you are just wiping your forehead and going, I'm so happy we don't have to go touch tons of code. Things are going to keep coming along and working the way they always have. But in the event some of you are really excited about getting into the multiple time zones or UTC stuff, we do have a UTC change guide that kind of goes through those step by step. One of the things that isn't there yet, but will be over the next couple of weeks, are a series of examples. So getDate really becomes DP domain time. That's the big one. And that's important to kind of adopt as we move forward, but we will be taking the lead on that. So you'll be seeing DP domain time more and more in all of our views and all of our examples. Some other tokens that are out there, DP domain time zone, which, as you might expect, just returns the current time zone of the domain. Same thing with user time zone. User time is going to go ahead and calculate it's basically getDate for a specific user. And then user locale will allow you to actually format things in different locales, which is something we haven't talked about as much yet. But this platform update is not just time zone shifting, it's also the ability to have different locales. So, i.e., dates are formatted differently for people in Great Britain than they are in the United States. Again, we're not expecting that to be a huge impact to anybody yet, since the vast majority of our customers are US-based and mostly in single time zones. So new features that are available and are going to be able to be used by you guys moving forward in any of your custom reports, development, even the metadata within the platform. So we've got some other functions. One of them will be DP convert date time, and this will take a date time and a time zone in and will allow you to spit it out converted to the destination time zone. And that one's really cool because it works in stored procs, even standalone stored procs. It's a CLR function that we've deployed or will be deploying to SQL for you. So some really good stuff. At the risk of boring some people on the line who really aren't super interested in what's happening now that they know they don't have to do as much, we're going to leave a lot of the details in the UTC change guide instead of spending a ton of time talking about them today. One of the things we want to encourage everyone as you get into that, if there's confusion, if there's issues, please contact support. If we need to do another webinar and dive into some of those things more in depth, we'll be more than willing to. But by virtue of the fact that you're not having to radically alter code, we think we've found a nice middle ground. So summing up the UTC update that's coming out, if you don't make any changes, everything should continue working and operating exactly like it does today. I know I saw Daniel Bourne and a couple of our other partners on here. So if you're sending date times over in the target time zone, you're going to continue doing that. You're going to ignore everything we told you guys 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, we presented the UTC approach, and we've had to make a massive pivot just to make sure that we don't throw the entire ecosystem into chaos. So we'll be reaching out to the partners again to kind of give them an update and tell them where this has moved. We will be continuing to enhance all of our applications over time, such that time zone is something that we always take into account. Again, your mileage may vary depending on your church with that. So if there's questions that come up, we'd love to engage and chat about it. But you can choose when and how deep you're going to go with all things locale and time zone. And like we've said a couple of times, the UTC change guide will have all of the details it already does, and we're going to be adding examples there as we go. So feel free to ask questions about that change guide, because we will answer all of them within the guide itself so that everybody can learn from everything. And I think that that's maybe it. We had scheduled this for an hour, but once upon a time, this was going to be a whole lot more complicated than where the team took it. I am going to say I want to thank, there's several of our churches who spent some time, a considerable amount of time with me on the phone, talking through this, brainstorming. So I'm really happy that we've had a chance to think this through a couple of times, not just from our perspective, but from you guys as well. So did we get any questions, Megan, or is it all quiet?
It has been all quiet. I think you're right. Everyone is just mopping their brow and saying, that sounds like a good way to end the week. So I think the one thing that you didn't mention that I did just want to make sure everyone was aware of, as far as the users being able to set their own time zone and locale. Like Chris said, they can obviously do that when they are like on the actual user record, or if they're going through the edit user record dialog from the masthead of the platform. But also we are adding like a little prompt that will pop up. So if a user logs in and they don't have a time zone and locale set, they will be prompted and just say, hey, would you like to set one? And they can set it right there if they want to, and that will then save and update their user account. If they don't want to set it for some reason, they can dismiss it, and it will not bother them again until they clear their cache. So that won't be an annoying thing that they have to deal with every time they log in, but we did want to add that just so that, especially at the beginning as we roll this out, that everyone's able to set their desired time zone and locale, and make it super easy for them to do it, since just put it right there if they can set it and move on with them. So, okay, I do have a question here of, will the change guide include examples of how date time values will be formatted via the MP API?
So that's a great question. And right now the API won't be doing any conversion. That's really going to be something that your application has to take into account. The API is going to be whatever the domain values. So whatever goes in, it's assumed it's going in as, in the case of, let's say, my church is Eastern time. So the assumption will be everything coming out is Eastern and everything going in is Eastern. We're discussing the possibility of a couple of these tokens being available in the REST API, but I don't want to commit to that right now. So the only committed thing to say is the REST API will be whatever the data is stored in and out. So it would be each application's responsibility to do its own conversion.
Awesome. Any other questions that anybody wants to throw out? I will be sending out an email after the webinar, as well as probably another one next week, just with well, next week I'll have the recording of the webinar, and then after the webinar and in that webinar, I'll also include a link to the change guide. Like Chris said, I am going to go ahead and share it as our editable form so that we can continue to update it, and you guys will always have the latest. So I will make sure to note on there when it has last been updated, but as we get any questions in or any clarifications are asked, we'll continue to update that so that everybody has access to the most recent version. Cloud tools, question on cloud tools. So we will be updating all the applications as we do future updates to those applications. So the fall release is just focused on the platform. And then the next time we go to update Batch Manager, we'll get it up to speed. Next time we go to update Check-in Suite tools, etc. So those things will all be updated in the same way the platform is, as far as honoring the user's time zone and locale for any dates. But as of right immediately after the update, tools will still be operating the same way they are today, looking at the domain time. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for your time on this Friday afternoon. And if any other questions come up, again, don't hesitate to reach out. We want things to be clear for you. And we hope that these are some enhancements that you can take advantage of how you desire. So thanks again, and we will talk to you later.